Here we are again with another edition of the Other Side Sports Podcast. I'm here with good friend Steven Snyder. How's it going, Steve?
What's up, J Reyes? It's going good over here. Coachless, but we're moving forward, right? On to a new season, and yeah, we'll see what we bring here.
Yep, coachless. So that's definitely what basically what we're gonna be talking about today. We got Arthur Smith has been fired from the Atlanta Falcons. Not new news, kind of old news now, but they've been on their way.
Peace.
Um, yeah, they've been on their way interviewing people, doing a lot of phone interviews, but got a couple of things. We were gonna start off just saying, going through this head coaching process, but now it's pretty obvious. At least we're on second interview with Bill Belichick, second interview on Jim Harbaugh. So it seems maybe we're that way. We're leaning that way, but we still haven't signed anyone yet. So the door is still open. So,
Well,
uh, and
I
I
kind of
go ahead.
yeah, I kind of wrote something about it, right? I think if you just listen to Arthur Blank and Rich McKay when they were going through the whole process of the press conference after letting Arthur Smith go and talking about the next head coach, you could just hear that they want win now, right? I think Arthur Blank's made it no secret. He wants a Super Bowl while he's still around. Arthur Blank's 82. I think this is all about trying to find somebody that he thinks can get them a Super Bowl now. So there's a good part of that, right? As a fan, that you're excited that you have an owner that is trying to win right now, right? They want to win immediately. But on the flip side of that, you also have to be concerned that are you really setting up the organization to be a consistent winner, or are you just trying to get that ring and then you're good, and then whatever the organization has to do after that, even if it's 3 years of terribleness, so be it, right?
So I would hope that if we do go all in, to win in the short term this year, next year, the year, in the next 3 years, that hopefully they're smart about it and leave us in a situation for the future for the next coach to have success and not going all in like we did when bringing back Julio, extending Matt Ryan, and all of a sudden we're in this cap heck, we're in this bad cap space where it took us a couple of years to get out of. So I don't know what they're going to plan to do, but yeah, I agree. It definitely, when you got these guys who have used to be head coaches before, you bring those guys in over the coordinators that are young for that reason, like you said, to win now. And they've talked about it. So it's kind of interesting, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh are win now, candidates. It's hard to argue that they both had success in the NFL. One's a Hall of Fame coach. The other went to the Super Bowl already, went to college ranks, just won a championship, looking to jump back. So it's I like our options, but then again, it's like is the ideal situation, right here. I mean, obviously, and if anything, for one, I know you are one of the few people I knew that actually didn't want Arthur Smith to get fired, for many reasons, and we can talk about that if you'd like. But if not, it seems that we have to get the opposite, or somebody that's not in the same realm of what Arthur Smith was, or else we should have just seemed to keep Arthur Smith around. So
It's
fascinating.
yeah, it's just interesting because if you look at Arthur Blank's hiring history, and I think he's really been a very much hands-on owner in choosing who these candidates are. Um, he's typically gone for the rookie head coach. Like Mike Smith was a brand new head coach. Dan Quinn was a brand new head coach. Arthur Smith was a new head coach. Jim Mora, I believe that was Jim Mora Jr. It was his first time as a head coach was with the Falcons. Bobby Petrino, when he brought him in, he was his first time NFL head coach,
Well,
right? So if you just look, that's what he's always done. And I would be surprised to see him change it up because it hasn't worked for him. I guess my thing is I wasn't necessarily championing or nothing saying for Arthur Smith. I thought the criticisms were overblown, and it was like a lot more was put on like Arthur Smith as this was his fault than really like people be setting what I thought were realistic expectations going into the season in the first place. And just a lot of the arguments I had heard, they just always seemed like just logical fallacies. And a good example to me would be Arthur Smith didn't know how to scheme Kyle Pitts. Okay, well then why did he have 1,000-yard rookie season when Matt Ryan was here? Like the more like clear clue of why Kyle Pitts wasn't as successful would be the quarterback play. and I can point all around the league. Just even if you want to take the Falcons out of this equation, you can. Well, why don't we talk about Austin Hooper when he left the Falcons? What has Austin Hooper done since he left with Matt Ryan? What is look at Evan Ingram when he was in the Giants? You know, a lot of people thought he was a bust, and then he goes down to Jacksonville. And now he's looking really good in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And you could just go through the list of T.J. Hawkinson. He didn't look like really much until Ben Johnson got there. Ben Johnson may have had a really good season with him, trading to Minnesota. Now he's with Kirk Cousins, and you know where they've been successful quarterback situations, you see successful tight end play.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the more obvious key to me. So I mean, again, if you're gonna make the decision, fine, you make the decision. I don't think if you make the decision because your expectation was we should have won more games than we did. I think that was just a missed level of expectations, and partially that's on Arthur Smith. I mean, you know, he came out early in the year. We actually didn't look bad in the start of the year. We had easier schedule down the stretch, and while I think with fans, they don't always seem to notice the names that aren't popular, right? Like how many fans know that you go into 2 games this year missing 4 starting offensive linemen, right? Like that's not something that people just tend to remember or be recognition of. Instead, they just see the way the game ultimately results. So
Yeah. Yeah. And with
it's
that,
one of those things.
and like you said, yeah, we did have a lot of injuries to end the season, and definitely even on defense. You know, I mean, how many games did we miss without Grady Jarrett, and then we missed
Yep.
Grady Jarrett and Onyemata too. It's at one point, so it was just compounding in the trenches, all these injuries, and
We
then
lost Caden Ellis too for
yeah,
periods at the
yeah,
end of the year.
exactly,
Yeah, it was a tough. Like I said, the injuries really caught up, and I think that, and then you had inopportune turnovers, whether it be by Desmond Ritter, which is we all know is very obvious, but you even have things like Bijan Robinson fumbling near the own 20 against Carolina.
yeah,
He had what 3 or 4 I think lost fumbles this year as a rookie. So like you'd have these inopportune times of a turnover and stuff that really was what was costing the Falcons the game,
absolutely,
more so than like any particular coaching decision. Even though we could always point to things that were bad play calls or bad decisions, we feel like, but at the end of the day, I felt like it was a conglomerate of a lot of things coming together, especially with the team and turnovers and injuries that really just cost us down the stretch because we just couldn't afford it. We were a roster that at this point still cannot afford it. There's a reason why we're going into the next year with the second or third most available cap space. Why? Because we're building for, like, that was the whole point. We were building to be in this position so that this year we could really finish out that roster. And I just felt like it was a little unfair to Arthur Smith because it was always a 4-year path. We knew it was going to take 2 years to stop to change over the roster. But it's the NFL. The NFL's cutthroat. So let's just hope Arthur Smith and Rich McKay can make the right decision. Hopefully Terry Fontenot's got some say in that because, like I said, our history with Arthur Smith, or I'm sorry, with Arthur Blank and head coaches has not been the prettiest. I'll say
yeah. And like you said, it really ultimately comes down to the quarterback position. That's how the NFL is. I mean, it's rare that you find someone like a Brock Purdy, who's the third string quarterback, to come into the year and then finishes off the season on a winning streak. It's like it's really hard to find that success with a young guy. And Ritter, you could say this is technically was his rookie season, to start just because he only played 4 games last year. So you're thinking, okay, well, coming into this year, we'll see. We'll give Desmond Ritter a shot. If he's not the guy, then we move on, But if he is the guy, then even better, maybe we have success. And it became clear throughout the season he wasn't going to be our long-term solution. He wasn't going to be the solution this year to win a bunch of games, but then neither was Taylor Heineke.
yeah,
So obviously, with this next coaching hire, we've got to get it right with the quarterback position. And,
yeah.
and
Well,
granted, and granted, the last couple of drafts, there haven't been the best quarterbacks for us to even choose from by the time we come around to picking. So it's not like we had our pick of the litter and we just chose not to draft a quarterback. We chose Desmond Ritter, but that was one of the worst quarterback drafts that happened recently. And so it's like, and so we got him in the 3rd round. And he's like the second best quarterback in the draft. So it's a little bit different. Like obviously this year there's going to be a lot more names at the top, and we're sitting at 8. So this isn't necessarily a who's our quarterback going to be. But granted, if we're bringing in a win now coach, you got to think we're trying to do a win now quarterback. Now I don't know if that means, in their eyes, that means draft a guy, or if that means bring in a Russell Wilson or a Kirk Cousins. But no matter what, I think it's safe to say whoever the coach is, they have to get this quarterback position right. Because if they don't, then we're going to be same position. Arthur Blank's going to be sad because we didn't win our championship that he wanted. So, and I wonder because the two, if you think Bill Belichick, all right, yeah, they had Tom Brady, and you could say that's lucky. Maybe Josh McDaniels worked with him or whoever was the quarterback coach when they drafted him. However, but we do know Jim Harbaugh works with quarterbacks, being a former quarterback himself. And so we saw what he had success with Alex Smith, and then he had success with Colin Kaepernick. So in a way, you think maybe the quarterback coach there is better. The Jim Harbaugh has got the leg up, but Bill Belichick obviously has the resume and the rings and the pedigree of being a Hall of Fame coach and trying to reset the culture that Atlanta Falcons. When's the last time we actually had our Hall of Fame coach in the building? Maybe people
Dan
from
Reeves.
Dan Reeves, but he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, so
He's not.
it's no, but he's the best one. I mean, he's probably our best candidate that's
I was like,
happened
he's got a Super Bowl
with Denver.
with Denver. I
Yeah.
would think he was in the Hall of Fame. Huh.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, it's a culture shift if we do bring him in. I know a lot of fans don't really want Bill Belichick. And going into the offseason, I thought maybe his best days were behind him because, I mean, you're not going to get any better than, 6 Super Bowls. You're not going to do it. You're not coming in here to win 3 Super Bowls. If anything, it's a Brady type situation where you win 1 and then like maybe you need to retire. But we have a good team. Honestly, we have a lot
Yeah.
of good players. We got a lot of cap space, and we have a lot of room to grow. So if we were to end up bringing in a veteran quarterback, well, now we can use that number 8 pick for something that we've all wanted, which is a pass rusher or the best cornerback,
Is
in
there
the
a
draft.
veteran quarterback out there that you really want to go out there and invest $35 million a year in? I mean, there goes your entire free cap space. So
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
it's one of those things where I just look at it and say, I don't I don't know what their direction is going to be. Bill Belichick, you could argue, yeah, the resume and all that. I mean, that'd be great to bring it in the building, but ultimately, the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your history was before in Atlanta. It matters what you do well here on the job today. So there's a lot of, I think, questions with people around Bill Belichick, but Arthur Blank, I'm sure, is enamored that, it seems like a fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Harbaugh potentially could be too. Like, so that's an interesting dynamic. I think the people who think it's all on Bill Belichick, I would highly doubt. I would think that Arthur Blank is going to pursue Jim Harbaugh very hard. Like he's gonna pursue him hard. And if he likes him more than Bill Belichick, if after these 2 interviews that they do, if they determine they want Jim Harbaugh, Arthur Blank will send one of his extra private jets up there and drop off a few duffel bags if that's what it takes to get his coach. So
Yeah, I wonder how much money he's gonna cost.
yeah, I'll give Arthur Blank that he's willing to pay for it. But I have reservations of are you picking the right guy for this organization? Like going back to how many people made fun of Detroit and Dan Campbell when they hired him, and because of biting the knees of people and all that, and everybody was talking about. But honestly, you needed a guy like that who, in some ways, comes in and he doesn't care. He really doesn't care about the 30 plus years of playoff droughts and all that. That doesn't matter to him. He's coming in here, he wants to play football, coach football, have fun, and he's going to let these guys go out there and play, and the best players are going to play. And I think in a way that's kind of what you want. Like, Bill Belichick's a bit stoic. So is that really what this organization needs right now? Maybe, maybe not. I like I said, I got my own reservations on will we make the right call and will that ultimately play out for us? But we gotta give the guy a chance. We gotta let him get in the building, make decisions, and if it's Bill Belichick, we'll see. Does he make the same old Mac Jones style decisions? Do we end up drafting Bo Nix with the 8th overall pick or something? Right? Nothing
Yeah,
against
who
Bo Nix,
knows? Who
but
knows?
at the end of the day, like those are the questions you have to ask, right? Like,
No.
or if you really want to Jane Daniels and you do want to go target that guy this year, is Bill Belichick the best guy to go get a quarterback like that and bring the best out of him? There's arguments that Tom Brady kind of brought the best out of himself, and Bill Belichick was just kind of there to help continue to teach him football and nurture that, right?
Mm.
more so than he was the guy that really was like hand holding him to that point, right? Tom Brady wasn't really a guy that needed to be handheld, but if you gave him the tools and the information and the knowledge, which Bill Belichick clearly has, like nobody can question his football acumen, right?
No.
But at the end of the day, like I said, is how does that play out in this future market with quarterbacks? Who they're going to get, who they're going to go after, how you're going to win that Super Bowl? We'll come and see. And like I said, I worry sometimes that you're too worried about this year and it's making you lose sight of the bigger picture. That at the end of the day, it's one thing to win one Super Bowl. I'd rather set up an organization to win like 8 Super Bowls.
Well, and what better guy than maybe Bill Belichick to be able to do that? So, but
We're not getting 24 seasons out of Bill Belichick. He'd be 100 years old, so we could get that past it. But Bill
I
Belichick
know.
comes in, it almost feels like a drive-by championship.
So we can change it up a little bit because all right, so we could talk all day about Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh. At the end of the day, though,
They're not the only candidates.
they haven't been signed. We didn't sign Bill Belichick after the second interview, so there's still wiggle room. Jim Harbaugh is scheduled to have another one, but where's he at on his other destinations, jobs that he might want? So I'm looking here. We still have a good number of guys who we've requested interviews from that are still in the pros or still in the playoffs, like Ben Johnson for the Lions. Bobby Slowick just got eliminated, OC for the Texans. And Steve Wilkes for the 49ers. He's a defensive coordinator. So now we
You got
have
Raheem Morris out there.
Raheem Morris still.
And I think Raheem Morris is one I think we should touch on because he's in Atlanta. He was here previously. He was the interim coach after Dan Quinn.
Yep.
A big part of the fan base wanted Raheem Morris hired.
We liked him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do like him. And he's got experience on both sides of the ball. I think you got to give him credit. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams, right? He coached that defense up to win a Super Bowl over there. He's been pass game coordinator and he's done multiple positions here. I think he's an interesting candidate that should definitely get a hard listen to. He's got a lot of experience now, especially going over there and working with Sean McVay. I think that's going to help him even more just understand a little bit more about different offensive concepts and what he might be looking for in an offensive coach.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put him down or kind of skip over him because I think he's an interesting candidate. I think he's one that we have to listen to carefully, especially if you want an invigorated fan base. But I don't know if Arthur Blank's going to go that far.
No, but he would kind of scratch the checkbox of the previous head coach, even though he was an interim head coach. That's experience. So
yeah, and he coached the Buccaneers too, right? At some point in the late 2000s, like he's been around for a minute. I think he had another head coaching job at one point.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, the Bucks.
Yeah.
And we've requested interviews with him. We've done a couple of other interviews with guys. So Mike McDonald, phone interview, DC for the Ravens. Anthony Weaver, assistant head coach, defensive line coach for the Ravens. Ejiro Evero, DC for the Panthers. We have Steve Wilkes, who we did a phone interview with, 49ers. And then Brian Callahan, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals. And there's it's kind of interesting because you look at Brian Callahan's been there for a while with Joe Burrow. So that's kind of one of those coordinator guys who can they win right away or are they going to build a culture?
Yeah.
I like that we're going with previous head coaches, but there are some of the names on here that are actually pretty exciting to see.
They're up and comers, right?
Yeah,
they're definitely up and comers. I agree with that. A lot of these guys too, we got to be a little bit patient with because the Falcons, they can't really do any of their head coaching requests until after the divisional round. That's per the new rules. So, come Monday, we might see some of these names pop up for in-person interviews, such as a Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick. Some of these guys, maybe even Mac McDonald, who looked good in the initial phone interview, right? They may request second interviews with them as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out this year. Where Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, given that they are already out of the playoff contention and everything else, they're a little bit easier to work in a schedule right now, right? It's like you can go ahead and get them on a second interview and do all that stuff. Where some of those other coaches, they've got to kind of wait a little bit until a certain point before they're really allowed to go through this process. So it'd be interesting to see if the Falcons are waiting for that as well. If they really are so enamored with Bill Belichick, the Falcons haven't quite, I believe, met the Rooney Rule, but they, really just requires some in-person interviews. And the fact that they're bringing in Jim Harbaugh and they could potentially bring in a guy like a Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick who don't fit that Rooney Rule, right?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to follow because I think that'll give you some indicators on how much they're really leaning towards Ben Johnson, or I'm sorry, Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And what's interesting too is you can kind of see where we're at. Well, with what our front office, Rich McKay and Arthur Blank, are kind of looking for. Like obviously, you got the two previous head coaches, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh. But some of these other guys, you look at the coaching trees where they came from. There's a good handful that from the Shanahan coaching tree, the Sean McVay, but then also the Ravens. We've definitely looked hard into the Ravens organization, so that's kind of interesting because if they go to the Super Bowl, I mean, we're not going to be able to in-person interview them until 3 weeks from now. So that puts a little bit more pressure on go ahead and signing a Jim Harbaugh or a Bill Belichick because I know San Diego Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, if they really like Jim Harbaugh, are they going to wait 3 weeks to see what we do? Or are they going to go after him? So it's going to, so it kind of, and in one way, you want to bring in some championship guys from this current season, but then also if you wait too long, you might lose out on some of these other guys that are probably going to be hot commodities. So, I mean, if we don't do Bill Belichick, Seattle might start calling him or somebody else, so it's going to start getting to a deadline at some point,
Well, I think if you're at that point, though, you have to think about it this way. Really, if you want to talk to a guy, then obviously Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh haven't convinced you. So I think that kind of answers your question, really, whether you really want to wait for that guy, anyways. Because if you really wanted him, you wouldn't want to wait to interview another guy again, right?
That's
if you're
true.
waiting to interview that guy again, there's a reason. There's probably something about that person and why you're looking at that person in particular. So, like I said, I think those are the indicators, right? That's what you're looking for to kind of see how this coaching is starting to narrow down in their candidates.
Yeah.
But yeah, so ultimately we've got 30 seconds. Let's go with who is going to be the next Falcons head coach.
Well, how about we just take a break and then we can come back to it?
No, answer it. Who is it going to be? Give us a name.
Okay, all right. So we're back now and talking about Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, other coaching candidates. The news was kind of made for us with the two, and so you asked me who I think is going to be the coach. It seems like Bill Belichick's going to be the coach. Do you agree with that, or do you think something else?
I mean, that seems to be the obvious candidate right now is Bill Belichick. Yeah, they think that's the obvious one. Jim Harbaugh, I think, would be probably more preferred by fans. But rumor is that he likes Justin Herbert. But then again, who knows? He might like one of these quarterbacks in the draft too.
And that's a good point that you brought up about the draft because what we're looking at when you actually look at the draft, currently we're sitting at number 8. You got Caleb Williams. The top 3 are Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Generally, those 3 are just consistently been the top 3. But then after that, J.J. McCarthy, maybe Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix, depending on what you think. So if we're sitting at 8, maybe Jim Harbaugh, if he really likes J.J. McCarthy, we probably are going to be able to get him at 8. But if we want any of the other 3, right, then
if we draft J.J. McCarthy at 8, fire Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see J.J. McCarthy being worth number 8.
I don't know if that's going to be a hot take or something, but yeah, fire Jim Harbaugh. I don't care if we hired him 2 weeks prior, fire him.
But we could get obviously that spot. There's so much talent on the board, because the quarter. I think, and you probably agree that the top 3 quarterbacks will be gone by 8. And we cannot draft Jaden Daniels at number 8, more than likely.
I think there's a chance, an outside chance, but I think it's more likely than not. But I think there's an outside chance because again, if you look at the draft, like who's currently getting in there, you've got Chicago, who, oh, Justin Fields, whether you like him or don't, I think there is an argument to be made that Chicago might stick with him. The fans love him. They sold his jerseys. I mean, there's enough there to stick with Justin Fields potentially. That's the case. I think there's an argument. Now, from there, you've got Washington, New England, guaranteed. They both need a quarterback. So I doubt you'll see Drake May or Caleb Williams will fall behind them. So what I think is interesting is, does one of those teams trade up with Chicago?
Yeah.
Give up a little bit because it's not a lot to trade up, and Chicago just takes the extra capital, get the guy they want anyways, and then one of those teams can lock in. Like, so watch New England, right? This is a new leadership. Before we didn't really see those guys making those types of trades, but we could see it this year.
Yeah.
But once you get past that, then you go Arizona. Okay, are they really ready to give up on Kyler Murray? I don't think they are. So I think there's a good chance Arizona stays pat, and they might go with someone like a Joe Alt, right? Try and secure up that offensive line and maybe actually give Kyler Murray a better chance to play back there. And then you got the Chargers. And the Chargers, were looking really good until the injuries just crept up on them. So they may just get lucky and be able to throw in a guy like a Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers or, a Dunze and just really throw that offense, take that offense off. But then you got the Giants. They're the wild card to me of all these teams. Of what did they do? They just paid Daniel Jones. So do they really go draft another quarterback at 6? What do you do with Daniel Jones? I mean, maybe that opens up the trade market.
Yeah.
And you got Tennessee, and I still stand with Tennessee. Just has drafted 2 quarterbacks in the top, 2 or 3 rounds the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And Will Levis actually looked good. He actually started to come on and look like he was making that team better. And I don't know if they're going to go draft a quarterback and just give up on Will Levis right now. But then again, all depends on how you rate. Ultimately, to me, Jaden Daniels. How do you rate Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, no, that's the great point because like you said, if the Bears want to stick with Justin Fields, and now you're talking about Washington or the Patriots who want the number 1 quarterback on the board. One of them can trade with the Bears, and the Bears can trade back, and like you get the guy they want, which should be probably Marvin Harrison Jr. So if that's the case, then the way that it does fall out is yes, Arizona, unless they trade Kyler Murray away, should just hold on to him because they just paid him too. And Herbert is there for a while, so they're not replacing him. If anything, maybe Odunze. I doubt Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board at 5. And then the Giants.
What could be curious too is watch a guy like, see, what's most interesting to me is where do people put Joe Alt versus the receivers? Because you've got a premier tackle here, and you've got Chicago, Arizona, who could both use that. Now Arizona could use a receiver as well, right? So I think Arizona very well could go receiver, but the Chargers right there too. So how far does somebody want to go? Do they really, Chicago, want to drop and lose out on a premier tackle? Because there is only one. Now they could drop back and say they want to go with a receiver or skill position. And if you do that, there's actually room. You could argue they could potentially trade all the way back to the Falcons and still claim, a top receiver on the board this year.
Yeah, potentially, because if they, that's a good spot for us to trade up because they don't need a quarterback. We would, and we're not the only team left that needs a quarterback. So we could potentially trade up. It's only 3 spots, so it shouldn't cost us too much, but it's going to cost us something, obviously. But like you said, they could drop back to 8. Now you're talking about either Brock Bowers, maybe even Rome Odunze if he gets past the Giants there, or Malik Neighbors, and that's just offense, not to mention tackles or other positions like cornerbacks or anything like that.
Yeah, what that other tackle, Fashanu? I'm probably mispronouncing his name.
Fashanu, yeah, I'm going with that.
Yeah, he's from Penn State. He's another one that might sneak up there. I think top tackles are the positions to watch in the early parts of the draft because some of these teams have quarterback, but they're all kind of lacking offensive line. So that might be a place where you see some teams start to reach, and then once people, once Fashanu goes right, like then you could see the guy from Oregon State as well. Fauga. Again, I'm probably pronouncing his name is wrong too, but how it is. And like I said, you just keep going on down the list. Like that's where you start to see runs happening.
Yeah.
Fayuga?
It's going to be interesting to see where Brock Bowers ends up in this whole thing because I think everyone pretty much agrees that he's a top 10 player in the draft. So it's who's going to take the chance on him? Not even a chance, but who's going to take a tight end over some of these other positions? But we've seen recently how important having a receiving tight end threat can be now with a lot of these guys you see coming into the league, hitting right away. It's like what we just saw Sam Laporta do this year with the Lions. You can potentially, he's one of these kind of candidates that you can just put right in. And, if he's familiar at all with the offense, then he should be good to go. So it'll be interesting because, yeah, I mean, if you're the Chargers, you could load up on offense. But same with the Giants. I know they need a wide receiver, but I think their offensive line was hurt a lot this year. But Tennessee needs offensive line. They need a defense, so it could line up for us. But it all just depends on what really the first step is. What do the Bears do? If the Bears are trading Justin Fields to somebody and drafting Caleb Williams, then that'll throw everything off for us. It doesn't throw anything off for them, but if that's their plan. But
you also have to remember, like, I find this draft to be one of the more interesting drafts overall because you've got a lot of receivers, a lot of DBs, right? Several quarterbacks, and quite a few tackles and edge guys. If you just kind of look at like the top 20 of the draft, right? Top 30 position players, like that's all you're really seeing outside of maybe the exception of a guy like Brock Bowers, right? It's receiver, quarterback, edge, DB, tackle, five positions, dominating it, right? And I think there might be even one interior guy too over out in Illinois, right? That one defensive tackle out of Illinois too.
Oh yeah, man, that guy is
yeah, dude, he's a
stud. Yeah,
yeah.
Jerzon Newton.
That's him. Yeah,
this guy is a stud. Yeah,
yeah, dude, that dude's a monster out there. But like I said, outside of him and Brock Bowers, which are both monsters, and that's why they're in that conversation. I mean, it's pretty clear the draft could be very interesting because I think those are all positions that teams demand these days. Skill position receivers, good quarterback play, good tackles to keep their quarterbacks upright, and then edge players and cornerbacks have become.
What's interesting about this draft is that the edge doesn't have like a top 5 edge guy. Most of these other drafts.
They have that like high end guy, but but there's a lot of guys that kind of fall in that middle area. And those are the types of drafts to me to watch because they're the ones that if you have the right scouting, usually 2 or 3 of these guys end up being really good, right? And maybe you have 1 or 2 busts too, but 2 or 3 of them end up like these are the drafts where you could sometimes have guys that maybe didn't come out as number 1 guys, but end up like looking back, you're like, if you're redrafting, like he's a clearly top 5 guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Lautu, the guy for UCLA. Like currently, right now on ESPN, he's sitting at number 14, but that's a guy with a good combine could just jump up the list if he's got measurables close to. Let's just say Aaron Donald or something like that. Like if all of a sudden these numbers are starting to pop out like other guys, you go, oh, okay, well, he put together the film. Now he's got the numbers. It's like, okay, is he coachable? But for most of these, like you said, it's going to be really interesting, because definitely in the top 8, which is where we're sitting. You
don't see any like guards, linebackers, safeties, right? You don't see any of those in that top 25.
No,
probably of any of these guys, right? And like I said, you see 1 tight end and 1 defensive interior. Everything else is edge guys, corners, quarterback, tackles, receivers. Those 5 positions. That's going to make for a very, very interesting draft.
Yeah.
It's a very unusual high-end draft. Now, to be fair, we'll see how much this shakes up too once people start running 40s and they really start getting into all the tape breakdown. Wait another the Super Bowl's on February 11th, so we got until February 12th, and then everybody will move on to the draft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which who knows how that's gonna work, but so on to the playoffs. Right now, what it's do you have somebody you're picking to win it all? Is there a team that you think so far, I mean, as we speak right now,
It
Detroit and
depends. Are you saying who do I think's going to win or who do I want to win?
well, who do you want to win? Who do you want to win?
Well, they're not in it anymore, but
Well, who do you want out of the teams that are still there?
I would. I mean, I guess I'd be like most people. I wouldn't mind to see a Bills Lions Super Bowl. That'd be fun because whoever comes out of that, there's a fan base that hasn't been able to celebrate in a while, and as a Falcons fan, I understand that feeling all too well. So obviously, we don't wish such bad juju upon anybody. Yeah, we hear y'all when y'all make fun of us. We're still nice about it.
Yeah.
And then but I think ultimately, if I was to be a betting man, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 49ers Chiefs. Like that would be my bet.
I know. There's something about this Chiefs. It's like every time, even though they're an underdog right now, and even though they're on the road, and this is not their best team that they've had, it's like,
But their defense is good.
man,
That's,
yeah,
that's the thing. Their defense is good. With their defense being good, like you don't need their offense to be what it's been. You just need Patrick Mahomes to do a couple Patrick Mahomes things a game.
no.
And I'm not betting against him not doing it anymore. Like, because there comes a point where you just, as a betting man, have to realize where your smart bets are, right? And they're not like against Patrick Mahomes these days.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about their organization that they've done. Even when they had the offensive weapons, they still had the defense. Man, it was the defensive line, and then you had like so a quarterback in the secondary somehow. Whether it's Tyrann Mathieu when he was there, or who they got out there now as their safety. Man, I can't think of it.
McFluffy or whatever.
Man, I can't think of it right now. But it's like they at the very
Courtney.
least they come at you with their defensive line, so they can get after you with rushing 3 sometimes, depending on how good your offensive line is. So it's like you don't even need the rest of the defense. Generally, it's like everyone just hold up for
McDuffie.
a couple. Yeah, McDuffie. Like hold up for a couple of seconds,
McFluffy.
and then next thing you know, you're in the back. And it's
McFluffy.
McFluffy. Hey, close enough, dude. Close enough.
Ah! And they've had Chris Jones out there for a while too.
Yeah, Chris Jones for
Chris Jones
sure.
is a beast. But yeah, no, but their defense this year to me is better than it's been in years past, right? I've been a big Nick Bolton fan for a while.
And
I had him in our IDP fantasy leagues. So I think they just have a good defense out there this year. Better than it's been in years past. And then you've got, again, if your defense can keep the team to 17 points, your offense doesn't committing turnovers. Like Patrick Mahomes is good for 20.
No.
Even with this offense, even with, MVS dropping 3 balls in the game and, Tony dropping 2 balls in the game. And then some dude nobody even knows making a 30-yard catch on 3rd and 25, right? That's what happens because that's what Patrick Mahomes does and the Chiefs do somehow.
Yeah.
Justin Watson comes out of nowhere, right? Or some other random dude.
It's always Watson, man. Watson's always some random guy. He gets like 3 catches, 62 yards, and it's like they're all on 3rd down and long or something. It's like goodness gracious.
It's either him or it's Travis Kelce, it seems like. And then, but anyway, so we'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's it'll, like I said, I wouldn't bet against those teams, but again, the Bills could beat the Chiefs this weekend. We'll see.
Yeah.
One thing that's always fun about those is weather doesn't matter, right? Because you can't be like, oh, did the Buffalo have to get prepared for weather in KC? No, I mean they're already prepared.
Yeah, they're definitely prepared.
Which I believe the game's in
Buffalo.
Buffalo this year, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be right. That should make it. That's different than it was last time. They played in KC, so now that KC's got to go to Buffalo.
Yeah.
But weather still won't matter, right? They're both used to playing in cold weather games, so I don't think weather really comes into factor here.
Yeah.
But I will say, man, that Bills crowd's rowdy. When you don't have the crowd behind you, it does make a difference, right? That's when you see those offensive mistakes and stuff. So,
yeah.
Did you see Josh Allen's like fake slide too? And they're gonna have to do something. Like I said, they're gonna have to either let defensive players hit these guys, give them that step, or you're gonna have to start like saying if you even fake it, you're getting called down, right?
Well, I mean, did you see last week where Patrick Mahomes just running straight around and no one's even touching him? Like 3 Dolphins, like just go right by him because it's like you don't want to hit him because if you come in there and lay him out, you're probably getting a penalty. But he's going towards the sideline, then he cuts back into the field of play, and you're like, all right, well, we were giving you the sideline because we can't hit you, but now you're taking advantage of it and getting into the middle of the field. And now if you slide, now if we hit you, now it's a penalty. So it's like you're really,
There's only one coach that's going to know how to handle that, and that's Dan Campbell. And he's going to tell him to hit him. We'll take the 15.
Yeah, that's what they should do.
No, I mean, I would if I was a coach at this point. I'd say, you know what, guys, I don't care. The first time, hit him. The first time, hit him. Like the second time, we may say stop, but the first time, I want you to hit him.
Yeah, if it's the 10-yard line, go lay him out because it
I'm
doesn't
not
matter.
saying intentionally commit a penalty,
goal.
but at the same time, if you're unsure, don't slow up. Just go through it, and we'll play it out the way from there. So
exactly,
but it's hard. I get it. It's definitely hard on defensive players now because it puts them in such a position where they have to play to the side of precaution because if they don't, they're guaranteed to get hit. But now some of these guys are taking advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the league, and that's always a problem. The league's got to look at stuff like that, and I think they will. I think they will take a look at that and say, does a player look like they give themselves up? And they may even give refs more subjective area, which is always going to make it more fun for the fans because somebody's going to complain about something.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. It'll be interesting because, again, this is what happens when you try to protect the product of the league.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And ultimately, it does come all this conversation keeps coming back around to this quarterback, man. And like you said, you got to keep the quarterback healthy. But at the same time, it's very detrimental whether or not you have a good one or not.
Yeah, I think they should just treat once the quarterback starts running, they treat him just like everybody else. That's always been my rule, and that way it doesn't matter if the guy goes down. Like running backs don't slide, but if he does slide, but he decides to slide late, then that's the risk he takes. We're not going to give you this extra.
Yeah, it's one thing if you slide and you're on the ground and someone comes and drills you in the head, like
there's like clear where they give up.
Yeah, but if you're already trying to make the tackle and then the guy sees you're trying to make the tackle and he slides to try to get ahead of the tackle and now you can't stop your momentum, you can't stop what you're doing. All right, there's got to be a judgment call that says, all right, well, what happened first, the tackle motion or the slide motion? But I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do about that.
I mean, not even then. Is it like if it's close enough, can you really even call it right?
Yeah.
To some extent. Well, yeah, I mean, just think about it, right? If in the split second, bang bang plays, but that's why I think they should give the defensive players a little bit of grace too on bang bang plays. And like I said, you can either bail down early, right? Or if you choose to bail late, then you risk getting hit.
Yeah.
And that way, if you get within a step, the defensive guy knows he can hit, right? There is no kind of guessing about it, like he might drop late, which is what you're kind of seeing right now. Is guys are like faking like they're dropping late, and the guy's kind of hesitating at the last moment, and that's what's creating it. So,
I'm kind of with you on this whole thing. I'd like the Bills and Lions. I'll be rooting for them. I don't think either team has won a Super Bowl. Bills have lost 4, and the Lions have never been to one. So
if we were to eliminate Drake May and Caleb Williams right now, just because, and Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, we'll go ahead and get rid of all of those guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who would you think the Falcons are going to draft?
Well, if we're looking for a quarterback, it has to be Jaden Daniels. But personally, I just have to see him. I have to see more of him because I haven't really watched a whole lot of them. But there is one thing that's interesting about this is Caleb Williams is 6'1", whereas Drake May and Jaden Daniels are both 6'4". And Daniels is a little thinner, looks a little more like how Mike Vick looked when it comes to he was thin when he came into the NFL. But then probably what you would like him to be, but he's got the height, and so. I like that about him. I mean, I like that he's tall. It's better than what we've seen recently with some of these number 1 quarterbacks like Bryce Young or Kyler Murray, where it's tough for them. Even Baker Mayfield, it was tough for him because he's only 5'11". So it's like
I guess we got to see really on the height because I thought he was taller than that. They say 6'4" on PFF, but we'll wait. We'll see. Dude. We'll get the official heights, and that'll kind of set that clear. Because in college, it's you never really know.
And I think personally, honestly, this whole thing is like, if we're drafting a quarterback, or it all comes down to if we're going to draft a guy or if we're going to sign a guy. And we could sign Kirk Cousins, but then, like you said, yeah, it's going to be over $30 million
All right,
a
so
year.
let's just assume this then. To your point, we assume then Jaden Daniels, if we're drafting a guy's already going to be the quarterback. Let's say let's say we signed Russell Wilson. Forget regardless whether you like or dislike that signing.
Yeah.
Where would you go from there?
If we had Russell Wilson, then I would expect us, or I would want us to identify pass rush, defensive line, best guy, but whoever ends up
Dallas
being,
Turner, I want to say, is usually right up there, right? The guy out of Alabama, Dallas Turner.
like currently it's Dallas Turner.
You got Jared Verse, right? He's out of Florida State as well. Is
Exactly.
another popular. And then to your point, you got Latu out of UCLA.
Yeah.
Right. Those are probably your three best edge guys.
And if maybe this Newton guy turns out to be like a Christian Wilkins type of defensive tackle, Aaron Donald, something, not obviously Aaron Donald's the top, so in between those two, if he's one of those, if he's that talented, then we got to go. I wouldn't be mad with that. It's just as long as we're helping Grady Jarrett out and then helping our defense out in the secondary where we could rush 4 guys and get a pass rush, because that's what's been the success for a lot of teams is, can you rush 4 so you can drop the rest of your guys back in coverage? And I mean, it's hard to beat that. That's how the Giants did it when they won the Super Bowl with Eli Manning twice. You had 4 pass rushers who were coming after you, and you had to prepare for them. And so if any offensive line has a weakness, one of those guys is taking advantage of it. So that's what I've always wanted the Falcons to do. I hope if we do sign Russell Wilson, that's the direction we go. But there are other pieces that we need, but I don't think we're drafting Malik Neighbors. We have Pitts, London. It would be nice to have another wide receiver, but it seems like that's what's that?
Nah, I'm gonna go a little bit something different here.
What's up?
I want to say, get your Brock Bowers, because while he might not be like the exact speed reference to Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers can be an inline blocker, which can allow you to use Kyle Pitts in that wide set receiver formation. To kind of think of like how Darren Waller was used, right, in a lot of ways, where they run him out wide, not always as an inline blocker, and then you could slide him in as a 2 tight end blocking formation sometimes too.
Yeah.
So this opens up a lot of what you can do from a formation standpoint, and could be really interesting. And if you sign a guy like Jim Harbaugh, and like maybe Jim Harbaugh wants to go later on quarterback, maybe he says, I'm going to take JJ McCarthy in the second and, go sign a veteran out there. That's interesting. Now, I will say that, it does look like there's rumored interest that Kirk Cousins and Bill Belichick. It might be a little blown out by Kirk Cousins just saying, hey, you don't, turn down the opportunity to play with Bill Belichick, which I think was him just trying to be respectful to, what many view as a GOAT coach, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it meant that he was saying, hey, if Bill Belichick goes somewhere, that's where I'm going, right? Like, but it'll be interesting to definitely see.
And he might like it up there. Yeah, and he might like it in Minnesota. I mean, he's under a pretty good coach. I think
he has a good situation. They love him in Minnesota. The fans are like, they don't treat him bad. So like I said, I think that was blown out. I think if Minnesota, wants to, they could keep him. They're in prime position to make him a fair offer, right?
Yeah.
To keep him around. So
that's definitely true. So yeah, that's because that's pretty much the options. It's either Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, if Denver just cuts him, let that post March.
Oh, Denver is cutting him.
And then you got Cousins is a unrestricted free agent, so he could sign anywhere. And so,
I guess really theoretically Denver could trade him, but they're going to end up eating all the money.
Yeah.
There's no way the team's not taking on that contract, right? They're going to let him. They'll wait till Denver cuts him, let them take the dead cap, pay Russell Wilson half or a quarter of what he would make.
Yeah. The only other thing I guess that we haven't touched on would be if the Bears trade Justin Fields to us. But I don't
I
know
don't think so.
how we're gonna do that. I just don't think that's gonna happen.
I
But
don't think so.
personally,
I think they're going to go after. They've got the ability to go get a skill receiver and a top offensive lineman. They did some good stuff already helping their defense this year. They made some trades, right? They made some smart trades.
yeah,
Made some good signings. So I think they'll be fine from a defensive side, right? They can continue to come back in later rounds and continue to beef up that defense a little bit, right? Because the edge is so deep and there's no real top end guy, right? But they definitely need tackle help and they definitely need receiver help. So like again, you're in the perfect draft for it. I think it's one of those things to watch. Like, does a team trade up like New England or even Washington? Don't rule out Washington moving from second to first.
yeah,
Even if it is just to guarantee they get Caleb Williams and somebody else doesn't come trade with Chicago to snipe him from them, right?
yeah,
So there's always that you have to be aware of. And like I said, if you're Chicago, you're and you've got riches. And I'd just say that, you got Justin Fields, you got a really good quarterback. You need to give him some stuff around there. Why not? Like when you brought in DJ Moore, you saw how well that worked. Like DJ Moore had a really good year. So I
yeah.
think everything shows you that Justin Fields can produce potentially, but again, is it his fault that he's had to run around and maybe his development as a passing was a little bit curbed? Unfortunately, like behind, right? Was a little bit behind because maybe it was bad coach, right? And no
Yeah.
offensive line protection, no real receivers to throw to. And then like that hampered his development.
Yeah.
Whereas when you start to get that fixed out a little bit, he's starting to look like, okay, there's something potentially here. So I think you go ahead and stick with that, get those great guys loaded up, because if you come back and then say Justin Fields still isn't going to work, then you can go back and get another quarterback. And at least that quarterback's walking into a position where you've got a roster around them to potentially help them foster and grow. And you do a little bit of the opposite of what you did with Justin Fields, right?
So a real quick, just a real quick then, I guess. Just quick ranking. 1, 2, 3. Trade for Justin Fields, draft Jaden Daniels, sign either Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. What do you have
I would go draft Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels fits Atlanta to me. I think he's a good fit for the fan base of Atlanta. I think, he's the type of guy Atlanta would really embrace and get behind. And like, I think he's got a lot of really good skill set. I haven't watched enough LSU film, but I have seen a few games. I mean, I really want to go back and watch that FSU game that I believe LSU FSU played this year as well.
Yeah, it was the worst game that he played.
Yeah, and I want to watch that. That's why I want to watch
Statistically.
that. He didn't have a good game against him. I want to see what they kind of were able to do to him to get him off his game. Because when the other games, the couple I did watch, he looked really, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would go. I really think of all those, you go Jane Daniels. He's a cheap quarterback option, allows you to take all that extra free agent cash you have, go after that. You might even get a second round pick, an extra second instead of a third, because of the Jacksonville Calvin Ridley situation. So
Yeah.
either
True.
way, they didn't make the playoffs, which will only help the Falcons even more because I gave them an even better draft pick in that situation. So
Yep.
I think it's one of those things that you got some depth in those second and third round areas to really continue to fill out the roster. I think in that early round, go get your guy, whoever it might be. Like I said I like Brock Bowers if your quarterback's not there, just because again I think he's a rare tight end talent at his size and ability to block and pass catch and stuff. And those guys are just invaluable in the league. The Travis Kelce's of the world are just invaluable in the league. Sam Laporta showed it, I can think of this year. So
Yeah.
I don't think another team will let those guys just kind of fall to the second round again because, yeah.
They're getting better at spotting them now. They're getting better at what they need to look for. And I think it's kind of like quarterbacks. It's rare that you see a guy even fall anymore because people are doing so much work on them. It seems like tight ends kind of the same way. So I think I agree with you on. I would rather go Daniels. I think number 1 overall, draft a guy because you give the rookie contract. It's not a win now move, but it's a win in the future in the short term. If you get one good year out of him, he goes into the second year. If he can improve, now we're talking because now we got a good team around him because like you said with the cap space. So Yeah, I would like to see us do that. Definitely, I would like to see us draft a guy. I'm cool with Bill Belichick, but only if, truthfully, I would like also Josh McDaniels to join his staff, because we just need a good offensive coordinator to join the staff with him, since he's a defensive guy. Because we saw what happened to his offense when he went rookie quarterback and didn't have Josh McDaniels, and it was pretty bad. So I'd like to see that happen this year. Doesn't have to be him, just someone who knows what they're doing with the quarterback, especially a young guy. Um, so that about wraps it up. With us closing thoughts. Got 2 minutes.
No, only thing I can think is we just gotta wait now. It's a wait and see game. Like I said, we'll know a little bit about the coaching by what plays out over this next week, and whether they really are going to get a Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, or they're going to wait for one of these other coaches that are in the playoffs. I think we'll really know that after this weekend, going into next week, as that all starts to open up. But I'm still leaning towards it'll be Bill Belichick, and then from there, I don't know if Bill Belichick's going to go with the Jane Daniels, but I mean, he coached Cam Newton, so you'll see. Well, I wouldn't put it past him.
No.
But yeah, from there we'll just see how we'll start getting ready for the NFL draft. I think that's kind of the next big thing, and obviously the rest of the playoffs. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get a coaching announcement soon, so at least we can have some direction. Like we'll have some idea of what they're going to do, and then you can kind of try and read the tea leaves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I doubt they're gonna show their hand with the 8th pick anytime soon. We're definitely gonna ride this thing out until the draft time comes around. So at the very least, the combine's coming up next month. Draft a few months after that, so it'll be a lot to follow. We'll be following it. We'll be keeping in touch with it, seeing where we're going. And yeah, if we'll definitely touch on this in the future.
We'll have to do some fantasy coverage too, right? Start
Exactly.
talking about some fantasy. In case any of you guys like IDP stuff, we'll talk some IDP too.
Exactly.
A whole lot of IDP coverage out there.
That's right. So until next time.
That's what the real football players do. Real football gamblers and fantasy players. We like our IDP.
Yeah, we like the defense. Alrighty, so that does it for us today. And thank you guys, and we'll see you on the flip side.